You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
You're listening to episode 151 of the Soul Forge podcast.
Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Shawn Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Hey everybody, it's Shawn here, and do I have an exciting treat for you this week? I just might. If you're listening to both this Soul Forge podcast and Rusted Robot podcast, you're about to hear kind of an amalgamation of sorts. A few weeks back, my good buddies, Paul and Dan from the UK, recorded an episode for Dan's Temporal Trek podcast. Last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, I used most of that recording for episode 289 of the Rusted Robot podcast. This week, what I'm doing is playing most of the rest of the conversation we had after that episode. So if you want the full experience, go listen to episode 289 of Rusted Robot Podcast, then come back and listen to this one here. The whole story is Dan needed some guests for his podcast that he's been running for a couple months now, and we were the first guests, Paul and I were. Now, if you know Paul, he's been on previous episodes of both Rusted Robot and Soul Forge podcasts. So what we did was we recorded for Dan. I used most of that for 289 of Rusted, and the rest of the conversation is now going to be heard here on Soul Forge for the very first time. I hope you enjoy it. It was a lot of fun. Paul and Dan and I want to start up our own separate new podcast. We don't know what it's going to be. We're going to actually talk about it over Skype probably tomorrow. So maybe that'll be an upcoming episode of either Soul Forge or Rusted Robot. We just don't know yet. But anyway, basically, Paul and I did the Sci-Fi Waffle podcast together in 2015 and 16. Did 40 episodes of that. Had a lot of fun. It got to be a little bit much. And you'll actually hear the story of that on this episode that you're about to listen to now. So basically, long story short, is that we talk about what it's like to be involved in the world of podcasting. And there's other little tidbits here and there. Hope you enjoy it. I'm going to play a promo for the Earth Station DCU podcast here on the ESO network, and then you're going to go right into that conversation from a couple weeks back, and then I'll come back at the end of this recording to wrap up the show.
I'm Drew Leiter.
And I'm Cletus Jacobs.
And we're here on the station surviving the coronavirus. Since you guys are probably quarantined there down on Earth, we'll let you know we got DC news, comics, television shows we're going to be talking about every week. Come join us every week on the Earth Station DCU podcast here on the ESO network.
I feel it's going to take some editing.
Yes. Oh, no, I'm just going to leave it all in. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's perfect. And this will be a great behind-the-scenes Rusted Robot episode.
Yes.
When is this scheduled to come out? Do you have a date? Do you
know? If my calculations are correct, Captain, I've got every episode coming out on Friday, and if I think about when that's coming out, we've got another 6 episodes to come, then a feedback episode for what was season 0, and then possibly any feedback for season 1. Mm-hmm. So 6-8 weeks. Give me a week's break in between seasons, maybe. And
so about 2 to 3 months?
2 to 3 months, yeah. So This will be a nice little time slice of our isolation in the COVID-19 crisis and what's going to come.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, it's really hard coming up with new Rusted Robot episodes. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
But you are so ambitious with this podcast.
Oh, man.
Holy crap. I would not want to do this. Like, jeez. Do you have a lot of downloads? Are you getting lots of listeners?
On the Castbox, I get very little because it's free to host, and there's no costs for downloads and sizes and things. You don't get any stats or anything. You just get how many times the episode's been played. Now, I listen to every episode once just to make sure that it's come through okay, so I don't have to take it off and then reload it. So if I deduct all of that, I've had the magic 47 listens.
Wow.
Which is quite strange. Obviously, that must have changed after today, because if one person's listened to it, then that's gone over. But as of the last episode, it was 47, magic Star Trek number.
Per episode, you mean? Or
just in total. It just gives me a total amount of listens. So it could be they've listened to the first episode 47 times, decided they didn't like it, and gave up. But I'm guessing that it's one listen for every episode, and then a few other people as well. So fingers crossed, that's
I know me and Paul listen to it. I think Jarman listens.
Oh, fantastic. That's always nice to know.
So you must have more than 3 listeners. Come on.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
They always start slow anyway, because obviously people will find it maybe next year, maybe the year after, and start to go back through the back catalogue. So you might pick up a few more. This is what we were finding with Sci-Fi Waffle, is you'd think, we've had 100 listeners. I think we had that once. And then you think, okay. And then a few weeks later, you look back and go, hang on, that's 105. And you can actually see when somebody's working their way through the back catalogue, because each week it goes up by another one. You think, somebody's listening to them. They're going back to the catalogue. But then you get some strange things like, there's a guy in Russia listening? Really? I don't think so, somehow.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's very weird. Yeah, you should put it on the Podbean or something like that.
Yes, yeah,
because that gives you the exact amount of plays. And I'm just looking at Rusted Robot here. Last Sunday's episode only has 52 listens, but the one before that was 76, and it used to be in the hundreds per episode when it first started, and now I'm lucky if I get 100 episode listens. So most are in the 70s and 80s now.
That is the problem, though. I mean, like you say, each week struggling to find something to put out. I'm amazed that you're still going. I really am. I mean, 40 episodes in, and I packed in because it was hard work.
Oh yeah.
Trying to just even the editing takes a long time anyway, but that's I don't mind that. That was the enjoyable bit. But the actual research, to looking into things, and so at least you can come out sounding intelligent. That's the hardest part. I mean, really. I mean, you think, let's talk about Elon Musk's thing, and you start reading into it, and 3 hours go by, and you're still reading something. You think, oh my God, I've got to actually do something about this. And you've got to write it all out so it makes it some sort of sense, and you summarize it quickly. Now, 5 or 6 hours have gone by, and this could be over 2 or 3 days.
Oh, for sure,
because that's the only time you have in the evening to quickly do it, and suddenly you realize you haven't seen your kids.
Yep. Well, I've been thinking about shutting both down.
Oh,
I know, that's because I'm not getting lots of listens. I do it because I love it, but it's exhausting.
I know what you mean, because that's what I was doing because I thought, we said this with 10 Forward, and we said, we would continue to keep doing this so long as that we were all enjoying it, and it didn't matter if 20 people were listening, or when we had to disband for various reasons anyway. But when we did, nobody noticed we'd gone. In fact, it was only Dan that got in touch on Twitter and said, "Where have you gone?" so
right.
Was there only one listener? It was really bad.
I discovered you guys later, because I didn't come to podcasts till very late in the game. Part of my work up in London meant that we weren't allowed to have our phones on us, so podcasts were just something I didn't have access to. Once I left that job and I could get a nicer phone and everything like that, I discovered podcasts late. I came into 10 Forward and then went back on the back catalogue and listened to the whole lot. And then I got more and more jobs where I was able to listen whilst I was on my job, shelf stacking at Asda's and things like that, where there's plenty of time, no one's talking to you, might as well, listen to a podcast. And it was great to have you guys in my ears, and I wasn't going crazy. I was able to keep my sanity by listening to conversations about things I like, or stuff that I hadn't even discovered yet. Other podcasts that, like yourself, Rusted Robot. You were talking about bits of sci-fi I hadn't really engaged with. I had never even seen. I knew RoboCop, but that was about it. Through you, I learned more things about the things that I supposedly loved, but I didn't actually know about. And then there were other podcasts, and that it sort of moved on. Then I discovered Jarman and, the Play on Nerds and all this sort of thing. So although people aren't watching or listening now or to whatever, whether it's YouTube or podcasts, what you're doing now needs to be recorded. And it's one of the things about the Temporal Trek is that I don't want it to just be a rewatch. I want it to be my experiences and remembering how I engaged with that subject and, keeping that my history in with the Star Trek that's going on. And maybe those other people will then start thinking about, well, how did I come to Star Trek? Why do I love Star Trek? And I think that's what podcasts do, and I think that's what your podcast does, Roasted Robot and Soulforge especially, because it's telling people stories, and that's really important.
Now, did you listen to Sci-Fi Waffle that Paul and I did?
Oh yes. As soon as it started, I was right there, day one, downloading straight on, I was there. I was a Waffler fan. At one point, I did think, should I write a little sketch at the beginning of this episode where I'm calling you in the past, recording a Sci-Fi Waffle podcast, but then that broke my brain as I tried to figure out how that was going to work.
I like it though.
And we were going to mention things that happened 4 or 5 years ago as if they're happening right now, that kind of thing, Or remember, 2008 market crash, now I can't buy a house, all that kind of stuff, that kind of thing.
I was happily sat here thinking Sci-Fi Waffle, that's gone, because I obviously closed it down and then let the subscription run out on the host on Podbean, and I thought, that's it, it's gone, it's never there. And then I had given my old computer to my son for him to play around with, and I said to him, look, I need to get a lot of old photographs and things off the hard drive and some old sound recordings and things. So I downloaded a load of stuff there, thinking I'd find all of the old Sci-Fi Waffle podcasts, and I didn't. I thought, crap, I've lost them all. I thought, oh well, they've gone. It's not a problem. I'm glad. Nobody can ever. When I become this rich and famous celebrity and they get me on the Graham Norton show, I can say, well, I used to do this thing, and nobody could ever find it again. Only to find that the Trekmate podcast is still going and all the episodes are on there.
Is that right?
Yes.
Some of those episodes that we did were pretty horrible, though.
Oh yeah.
Like when we just did celebrity birthdays,
yes.
We had nothing to talk about.
Yes, that was particularly horrific, wasn't it? That was one of the earlier ones, though. That was unfortunate. Yes. It was trying to, like you say, you always start. A podcast will start one way and end up being something different by the time it finishes. I'm so glad we moved on from that.
Oh, I know, and like Rusted Robot, it's gone through so many transitions since it started 6.5 years ago.
Well, that's why it's been going for 6.5 years, because you adapt.
Yeah,
you kind of have to. And with Soulforge, I don't even know. It became a way for me to talk about my personal problems and things I'd been through, and then I went and started interviewing people and just talking about all kinds of random things. So it's become a podcast about everything. I just wish I could get more people to listen to it somehow.
There is a podcast I would love to do. Somebody came up with the idea, and I can't remember who it was now. It was I know who it was. It was. I have a fear. Ooh.
Star Trek True Crime.
No.
That would have all the subscribers.
Edith Keeler Must Die.
It would. Why do I get the feeling it was Josh that said this? So I've got to be careful what I say here. But he came up. It might have been him that came up with an idea of, or somebody on your podcast said it. Interviewing people, just old people especially.
That's Josh. He has an idea for interviewing people who are 65 and older.
Exactly.
Just talking about the history of their life and things that they remember, just so those stories don't go away.
Exactly. That should be done.
Yeah.
That should be done.
I even gave him my old microphone for it, and he did a few interviews, but I don't know whatever happened to it.
Exactly. It's not easy to do. You can't. I mean, you got to gain the trust of old people, which is quite hard. But yeah, it's I say old people. My God, that's only 10 years older than me. So yeah, you've got it. But that is such a good idea, and it was only a few weeks, a couple of months ago, that I was talking. There's a radio-controlled model truck club over here, and I was trying to get into that and do things. I was helping them set up one day, and this old fellow was there, and we all sat down and had a tea break, and he started talking, and he had been in the army, and he used to drive tanks, and he also used to drive the hello cat. He used to drive the trucks that used to transport the tanks, and he
Hey, not a podcast without a cat.
So he was telling a story about he was transporting this tank from one town to another, and he took a bend rather too quickly, and the tank fell off.
Oh no!
It wasn't tied down properly, and it was the Gurkhas who had actually tied this thing down. And he thought, well, they should have known better than that. So, but he didn't know. He didn't know it had fallen off. He got to the actual base, got out the truck, and the guy came up to him and said, what have you got for us? He says, I've got a tank. He said, where is it? And he looked around, and the tank was missing. So he said, oh my God. He said, well, you better find it before the top brass comes up and asks where this tank's gone. So he went, oh my God, what am I going to do? So the Gurkhas who had travelled with him, they all said, don't worry, we'll sort it. They then drove the truck off. And he's standing there thinking, oh my God, I've got to tell this guy that this truck, this tank's gone missing and we don't know where it is. And is it damaged or whatever? They found it and by hand pulled this thing back onto the truck. So this 60, 70 ton tank that they managed to winch it back out the thing, put it back on the truck, drove it back in. The barrel was broken.
Oh no!
So he's saying, right, well, I've got to go and have a word with this guy. So he went up to the top brass and he said, they said, right, what's the problem? He said, well, sir, he says, I think I've damaged one of the tanks. He said, I've just brought it in. He said, okay, let's go and have a look at it. What have you done? Came back down and the barrel was perfect. And he said, well, where's the damage then? He said, I don't know. He said, I thought I'd damaged it. Maybe I haven't then. He said, okay, well, leave it like that. And off he went. And he turned around and all these Gurkhas had basically rebuilt the barrel. They'd sourced a new barrel, put it on, fixed it all up, painted it, and it was all done and dusted before anybody knew it had actually broken.
Wow.
Those are the sort. I was sat there, I was thinking, oh my God, I wish I'd recorded this. I wish I'd started with record straight away, because that story is gone. Nobody. There was about 15 of us all sat around listening to this, and it was an amazing. And the way he told it as well was just perfect. As only an old army guy could tell it. And I sat there and I thought, I really wish somebody would start doing this, because I don't think I could do it. I'm to sit down with somebody I don't know and try and record something like that would be quite hard. But stories like that need to survive.
A million ideas for podcasts, and there's so many golden ideas. It's just to get the right one and to find the audience.
Yes, and like I say, that's the hard thing, isn't it? It's like, can you imagine a television program doing this? If you imagine a guy going up and got this great idea for a television program, and they go, yeah, that's fine, but you can't put it on TV. So,
right, exactly.
And that's what you're stuck with. You say, or if they say, yeah, well, okay, well, we'll put you on channel 705, at sort of midnight, and everybody's going, what the hell, 705? And only if you stumble across it at midnight one night when you're drunk and you're watching something, you might find it. You might make the best, most fantastic podcast. You put it onto Podbeam or whoever, but nobody knows about it.
No, and you have to always be hustling. Like I'm on so many different podcast Facebook groups, and they're always sharing their links, and they're trying to subscribe. You subscribe to my show, I'll subscribe to yours. Let's review each other's shows. Let's follow each other on Instagram and YouTube. And I don't know if any of that actually helps, because who wants to listen to your show? Nobody wants to listen to your show. They want you to listen to theirs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you need like a social media secretary who's going to dedicate themselves to doing all your stuff, talking on Twitter all the time. I've given up on Twitter. Like sometimes I'll post an episode link, but it's just nobody cares. It's too much work.
Yes, that's right. It is. That's the other bit I was finding hard is when we were doing Temporal or Sci-Fi Waffle, is that I'd be going for a walk one day and next minute my phone buzzes and somebody's tweeted me and I've got to reply to this.
Right.
I'm trying to take a break from this.
You need somebody to do it for you, because you can't record your podcast, spend time with your family, go to work, and spend 8 to 12 hours on social media doing all the hustling and bustling, because it's impossible. So you need somebody to do that for you. And because we're not making money podcasting, you can't afford to pay somebody to do it.
That's right.
So you have to do it for the love, which is why I do it. I don't get a lot of listeners. I have some dedicated ones like you guys. There's Jarek, there's Richard from Australia, and a few others who absolutely adore the show, and I keep going and I keep doing it. But every once in a while, I think, you know what, I could take a break for 2 years and it would be okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I found that, and you could burn yourself out if you're not careful. I mean, I'm surprised after 6 years you haven't, because after 40 episodes I had. I mean, I've been doing it with Temporal, of course. So I mean, we've been doing those things, and even that was, there was 3 dedicated people with 2 others or 3 others that could come in at any one time and help out. But to try and find things to talk about, especially if you're just talking about Star Trek, that's hard. How many things can you actually talk about? Book reviews are good because there's a new book, but other than that, there's nothing new. At that time, there was nothing new coming out. Now it's all taken off again. But
and that's the funny thing, when you guys were doing 10 Forward and the book review episodes come out, those were the ones I wouldn't download because I didn't care.
Yes, exactly, and we found that a lot. A lot of the people don't read the books, but then there are a few that do. So you get a different audience, and that's why one of the reasons why we try to do something different each time. So maybe there'll be a book review, then there'll be the Desert Island, which is good. But again,
the shipwreck and
the shipwreck as well, which was born out of the fact that nobody else was coming on to do the Desert Island. We'd run out of people to bring on and do it, and every now and again you get a guest and go, oh, and a new listener, quick, get him on. Suddenly there'd be another host.
So you have to change and adapt.
Exactly, you have to do different things, and that's what I was hoping, that if we could get like a group of maybe 5 or 6 people, or maybe more than that, and either have 2 people on an episode or 3 people on an episode one week, the different 3 on the next week, and then another different 3 as we mix and match. So each time you get different people all the time, and that way one person might only do 1 podcast a month.
Yes.
So
they don't get burnt out.
Exactly. You get a rest. You come back and you're refreshed. You might come up with an idea in that time. You've certainly got time to look into things and do it.
And it's like Stephen German on their Play on Nerds. They had to change, and they're doing a lot of Muppet Treks. Did you guys hear the ones that I guested on there?
Yes.
Ago?
Yes. Yeah. That caught me out. I didn't realize they were having guests, and then suddenly you were on it. I went,
surprise! Here I am.
How does this work? It's just normally been the 2 of them, and you're so used to hearing just the 2 of them. Does a guest work? But it did. It was really good.
It was okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we recorded that like around midnight on a Friday, I believe, or a Thursday night, and I was exhausted.
Yes.
But as long as I sounded coherent.
Well, my very first ever podcast, that was with the Lou Trek show. Have you ever heard down at the Lou Trek show?
Yeah. Battle Bridge is one that I listen to now, but I've gone back and sort of listened to some Lou Treks as well.
Yeah, that was my first ever podcast experience with Lou and Brian. And I was recording at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I had to stay up until 3 o'clock. Then we started recording. Then I realized, oh my God, this is going to be an hour or more. So that's 4 o'clock in the morning. Then I got to get to bed and go to work the next day. So, oh God, is this podcasting? No, I don't want to do this.
See, the things we do for the love of podcasting, it's exhausting, it's unrewarding, but we love it. So it's just one of those things that you can't explain to people who don't do it.
When Dan was saying that he was going to be doing this, and he said, any tips? And I said, first of all, don't just be one person on a podcast, because that can be, in fact, I think, it was Josh, I think, mentioned it. It can sound a bit monosyllabic and a bit all the time. You've got to have, something to do it up a bit. So the voices were a good idea. That was amazing. You did better than I did with any voices I've ever done.
It was all about Audacity. It was basically just me.
Not all about Audacity, because I've used Audacity, and all I hear is this Scouser who's talking in a high-pitched voice or a low-pitched voice. It's me all the time. I can't change the voice. But there were some voices in there. I thought, that's not Dan. He's got somebody else in to do that.
No.
All you fuck me. You had an incredible American accent. I can't do accents.
It was impressive. My accents are crap too. They all sound the same. It's like a drunk Russian.
Oh, I haven't done a drunk Russian yet. I'll have to work on that one. Right, thank you very much. That's coming in. There we go.
Yeah. But the other thing is a minimum of people on the podcast should be 2, because that way you get back and forth into conversation. The best ideal is 3. So when we were doing today, I thought, great, 3 of us, that's going to go well. And it does, because we can get different opinions. It's not just 2 people talking the same opinion. You do get I didn't like that, I like that, and all that.
That's why when I do Rusted Robot, it's me and Josh, but sometimes his wife Kitty will come on and throw the dynamic off, and it makes it more fun.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it is always better with 3 or more. I think 4 you start to push it in a bit, because then you got too many people trying to get in with their opinions. So 3 is an ideal, and more than that, you'd need to spread it out over 2 or 3 weeks.
So that's podcasting for you in a nutshell.
That's right. So what I was going to suggest is we 3 should podcast more.
Yes.
I would go for that.
Perfect. Yep. All good for me.
Because it worked on the when we did the when the 2 of us did the Rusted Robot replacement bit. Because that's right, that worked well. But when the 3 of us have done. What did the 3 of us do recently?
Well, we did an episode of Rusted Robot.
It was Rusted Robot, yeah. So that worked really well. Because and I think the 3 of us really, we all bring our different things to the podcast, and we all work really well together.
We do, and we're essentially 3 bald guys wearing glasses.
I know, yeah. You missed that, but you missed that comment when you were trying to get the sound working. Shawn says that, and I went, oh my God. It's because we all go, I can't get this thing working. Why can't I get this thing working? Oh, no. That's why we're all bald and can't see a thing.
It's the solar panels to run the power for the podcast. You see, that's what
yeah, there you go.
It's for,
that works.
I was going to say it's the old solar power for the sex machine, but unfortunately, that ain't true.
Sex machine podcast, it's all the same thing. It's
the same. Women love the podcasting. That's not true.
I'm only in it for the podcasting. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, you're in it for the women, Shawn. We all know that.
That's true. Yeah.
How's that working out for you?
Well, I got her daughter into Star Trek, so pretty good.
That's it. Well, yeah, that's it. You need to get the mother into Star Trek, though. That's the thing.
I'm trying, but she's not having any of it.
Oh, I see. You're worming your way in through the door. So I like that. That's a good idea.
That's it. Yeah.
Whatever works. You know what I'm going to do, guys? This last little 20 minutes, this is going to be an episode of Soulforge. Talking about podcasting.
Okay.
Yeah. Not episode 150 that comes out on this Thursday, but next Thursday, this is going to be episode 151.
But Shawn, nobody will listen to it.
Nobody's listening now. It doesn't matter.
This will be the sequel to the Soulforge that you did about trying to get people into podcasting, and this is the sequel telling them to get out of podcasting, and then it's
why you
completes the circle. Yeah.
Yes, it's perfect. It's perfect. So what is it, midnight there for you guys?
Yep. It is now.
Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun to record. Paul and Dan are great guys. If you're not listening to Dan's Temporal Trek podcast, you should. You can listen to Paul a few weeks back here on Soulforge on the Suicide is Painless episode. Back in the day, Dan and I did a thing about him being a writer. Of course, you know him as the shout-out that I put into episodes every once in a while saying...
Hello, I'm Daniel Peter Hitch, author of the Bubbles the Pirate children's book series and the Connected Worlds Chronicles. You're listening to the Soulforge podcast. Keep forging your soul.
I throw that in every once in a while, and so if you haven't purchased his books, you probably should, or at least check out his Temporal Trek. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you'll come back next week. Hope you got a lot of more insight into what it's like to be a podcaster. And if you want to start your own, definitely do it, because there's 750,000 podcasts out there. Why not add your voice to the mix? But until next time, thanks for coming by the Forge and listening. Hope you're checking out the website and all the social media links there, soulforgepodcast.com. But until next time, take it easy. And remember, sometimes deciding who you are is deciding who you'll never be again. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Soulforge Podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we hope you'll tune in again next time. Remember that you can visit soulforgepodcast.com for all of our social media links, and don't forget to share the show with everyone you know. The Soulforge Podcast is your best source for living your best life.
Think about it.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.